Welcome to Reputation Revolution. This is the podcast where we help individuals like you to establish your voice in the marketplace, enhance the credibility of that voice, extend the reach of your story and your message, and finally, extract value from your efforts in building a meaningful personal brand that's both recognized and respected. Now, on with the show.
Kris Ward, welcome back to the show. It's been so long.
I am thrilled to be here, and thank you for having me back.
Kris, you were on the show not that long ago. I wanted to get you back on to talk further about your personal brand because you're doing heaps of great stuff. Now, just to recap people who maybe didn't catch the previous interview that I did with you. It was all around how to leverage your time and resources while building your personal brand was kind of the theme. And you took us through, the need to have systems in place and to build out your team and manage your energy. So if you haven't heard that, had to listen to that episode, very well worth doing so. But I want to focus, this is going to be the focus on you, your personal brand, because you're doing so many things well, and all the things that
flattery will get you everywhere.
All the things that I talk about here on the show, you're doing. So I want to unpack that because it's great when I see that in action and how it shows that people can do it. Now, granted, you've got systems and processes in place to allow that, so there's a nice little segue. But at the end of the day I want to, if I may, unpack with you the types of personal branding and profile building activities that you do and how you make them all work. So you up for that?
100%. You lead the way. I'm here. Have fun. Yeah.
Alrighty. So at the end, you run your own business. Walk us through just quickly the business and what you're doing, and I guess you'd still call it a personal brand based business, or albeit it's around the name of your book, Win the Hour, Win the Day, and that's the name of your podcast as well. Interestingly, what do you think about that personal brand versus having a brand name like that?
Well, I think it doesn't really matter in my mind because Win the Hour, Win the Day, stem from the book, right? Yeah. And sort of my experience. So, and now our podcast, Win the Hour, Win the Day, is not about, systems and processes and team building and all the magical things that we do for our clients to get them 25 hours back a week within the first month of working with us. The podcast could be anything from sales to LinkedIn. And that's just because, we chose that for a couple reasons. So you have to pick a brand, whatever it is. Now, with my brand, Win the Hour, Win the Day, it's spun as we talked about in the previous show. And I do think, Trevor, you gave a fantastic interview as a host. You asked very thoughtful questions. So, of course, I'd encourage people to go back and check it out. But this all spun from when I was pulled away from my business for about 2 years when my husband passed away. And so, let's be honest, take the emotion out of that story. If I had returned to my business and it wasn't there, I was not in the headspace to start looking for jobs, try to write a resume, be charming in an interview, and learn a new job. That just doesn't happen when you lose like your buddy and your best friend. And so what I want to say is, I think Win the Hour, Win the Day came from the book, and then things spun off from there. Because previous to that, I was really in as a marketing strategist. But I think it really, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter that it's Win the Hour, Win the Day versus Kris Ward. I think those two are all over the place because it's my face representing it. Yeah. So I don't see them as two separate things because I'm the one out there all the time with it.
Yeah, and you're inherently connected with it, and you're the ambassador and the cheerleader, and you're driving it.
Yeah.
And I think it probably makes it a bit easier because you've written a book about it. So what came first in all of this? And as you said, you've going from running a marketing and branding strategy agency and to doing this pretty different type of business. But in terms of what came first, was it the book? Were you already on social media? I think you've already said that the podcast followed the book. How did this lay out for you? And was there a plan, or is it just things roll out as we discover new tools and tactics and that sort of things?
Well, I think you might really find this conversation interesting because, first of all, here's the truth. When I came back to work after my husband passed away, I was off social media for like 2 years. I had nothing to say. I just had nothing to say. Like, what am Facebook? Oh, look what I'm having for breakfast. My husband passed away. Like, I just did not have a lot of conversation in me. I mean, I'm a very positive person. I wasn't in a dark place. I find life very affirming, but I didn't have the bandwidth to be chit-chatty on Facebook and engaging, right? And Facebook was still kind of, the forefront at that point. So I really kind of licked my wounds and worked on things and worked with my existing clients and got referrals and just kept a quiet life. And one thing led to another where I realized that the people I helped best were people that were in business quite some time, and they were still working insane hours for where they were in their journey. And so I realized that because they looked so good on paper, no one knew they were struggling. They're not going to put out in LinkedIn like, oh yeah, I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm so glad you like this. So I realized that the book was an option to reach them more effectively. Now, when you read that book, it's very positive. It talks about how, all these things that you can, the big compliment I get is it's an easy read and there's tangible takeaways. I'm all about no fluff, big results. So you can read the book and start putting some immediate things in place. So that's great. Then when I have to now promote the book and go on podcasts, this is where it gets really interesting for someone like you, Trevor, who's all into the brand, is I will tell you, I had people come to me and did everything but till they were blue in the face. And they say, Kris, you have to tell your story about what happened and why you wrote this book. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it to define him, and I certainly didn't want it to define me. And so what people are saying is, Kris, you'll just be this person who looks like you're organized and this productivity person, and that gets annoying quick. You have to tell the story so people will remember it. And I really struggled with that for a long time, and I didn't want to do it. Also, because my husband and I were so positive about his story, we never used the word cancer, ever. If we were forced, we'd say he's in chemo or he was diagnosed. We wouldn't go into the entrance of the cancer unit through those doors. We wanted nothing to do with it. And so we did all these very subtle, but we felt powerful mindset things that kept us on a positive path, right? So I didn't even have it in my bandwidth to say that word. The first couple of times I had said it, what to me was like it was saying something very vulgar, or like I just never said that out loud, and it just was really a horrible thing to then be sharing with strangers, right? And I also struggle with oversharing, where I see people and they're just telling their childhood traumas as part of their brand, and it's not a good fit for me because I'm a positive person. So I also had to learn how to navigate it when I did get into an interview and somebody wanted to bestow a lot of sympathy on me and make it a more tear-jerky than less positive story. And so I would say, you know what, everybody has something, and this is my something right now. So like I'm no different, everybody has something. So I also had to learn language around how to move people's energy so that it didn't become this needy, cryy, tear fest thing that I didn't want for me or his memory. So I really struggled with my brand in that capacity. But another thing that happened of this, which I think was very positive, is my husband was my biggest fan. He thought, God help me, he thought I could do anything. And sometimes that was very stressing. I was like, oh no, I better be able to do this, because he thought anything I turned my hand to, I could do, right? And he always felt that I held myself back, like I was very work focused, and it was more about relationships, and I was always like, get stuff done. I'm a recovering Rushaholic. What happened when I work with clients, they would love working with me, and we'd have fun, and they liked my sense of humor, and they liked how direct I was, and we got stuff done. But when I went online for social media, I somehow then became a more veneer version of myself, because I thought you're supposed to look professional and sound professional. Also, I really struggled with, if you asked me to do a speaking gig, Trevor, you invited me there. But social media, you're just kind of strolling by and I'm tugging at your sleeve. So I then felt I should be least annoying on social media, right? But after everything with my husband, your life changes, and I just didn't have the extra energy to be dealing with these things. So I came out a more real version of myself than before on social media. I was more direct. I was more funny. I was less polished. less veneer. And that seemed to really make a difference. And I think, I hate when people say, be authentic. Well, who would try to be inauthentic? And it wasn't that I wasn't being authentic. It's that we all have different versions of ourselves. So who you are when you're visiting grandma is different than who you are when you're playing sports, is different than who you are at work. They're just similar versions, but they're slightly different.
Yep.
And so I had different versions and a different version for social media. But when I kind of just didn't have the capacity to put on a face anymore, then things really changed for me. And I didn't understand how much I was hiding behind the veil of professionalism.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. And so how long did that, I guess, I don't want to say process, but how long did that take for you to, I guess, find your voice and be comfortable, which is really what our personal brand is, bringing our whole self to social, the same to podcasts, same to work, the whole thing. How long was that transition, I guess?
Well, I'll let you know when it's over, Trevor. So I think right now I was meeting with my team and I was struggling with my voice in blogs because in video people are getting it and I'm comfortable there. But in blogs, I hate generic nonsense blogs online like how to lose weight. Well, set a goal and exercise more. Like what the heck is that, right? So I was saying to my team, I wanted to sound like me and you get so caught up in writing, which is different than how you sound. Yep. So right now I'm working through the layers of my blogs to be more me on there. But I would think it really was quite a process and quite an evolution that had a lot of awakenings, at least for a solid year, where I had to learn to not. I think your strength is also your weakness. So my strength is getting stuff done and seeing the world in systems and being able to hire really effective people for my clients in the winner's circle. But that's a lot of stuff in your head. And so then I have the ability to assess situations and, I'm good at assessing things. I can listen to your podcast probably for a good 5 to 10 minutes and get a flavor of who you are and what type of guest would be a good fit just by how quickly you speak or the vibe or the words you use. But that's in my head. So then it's really a new discipline to drop the thinking and just be, which I'm ashamed to say, like we hear these phrases all the time, but somehow they didn't resonate with me, or I think we don't understand the depth of what they mean. But this whole idea of, we're not here to blend in, and anyone that we admire or any celebrity or anyone that we think is doing a really effective job, it's because they're different and they're speaking their truth and they're refreshing. And yet we like that as consumers, but then you go out and you think, oh, I need to look like I'm a professional and I have a big boy or girl company. And so I was so surprised that, wow, in order for people to remember me, I can't be like everybody else. And so that sounds like it makes sense, but you understand that to a deeper and deeper level every day, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. It's a journey. I think most people, let's call it finding your own voice, or however we want to, bringing your whole self, or the authenticity, that horrible word. But there's so much nuance to it. There's so much, depth to it, as you've just explained, and it's a never-ending journey. I've always been a believer that, when you're putting you find your voice often through content and through talking and speaking and doing those things, and you get better. I mean, I was speaking to one person who, in the early days of blogging, I've been blogging since 2007, and in the early days, there was a school of thought, and it's kind of still true today, but if you don't feel a bit queasy by the time you hit publish, you haven't gone hard enough on the topic. And I don't think, you want people feeling sick about publishing. You want them to enjoy the blogging experience. But there's a bit of truth in that, to push yourself to have that point of view and, have an opinion and a perspective. Because if you're going to build a thought leader brand, you're going to need that. And that brings with it a whole lot of baggage potentially. I don't want to, be seen to be promoting myself. Oh, I don't want to, what about if people don't like me because of what I'm saying and all of that. And it's all wrapped up into how we deliver ourselves and show up.
I agree so much. And the other thing too, I'm still struggling with a little bit is I'm a very positive person, and also I'm Canadian, so we're polite. The joke is if you step on our foot, we'll say sorry, right? So polite, and I'm very positive. And so then I also have to learn that you can be positive, but I have to say some controversial things in my videos or online, or I'm no different than anybody else, right? So, we talk now, we're coming out more about content about one of the people on my team were like, okay, here's a good header for video. Why outsourcing agencies are robbing you. Well, here's the thing. They charge the client $8 and then they pay the outsourcer $4. And then they have these long-term contracts. Now, in theory, that's not robbing you. They have a business and their profit's in the middle. But the outsourcer is losing money and the client is paying more than they need to. And they're like, this would be a great title, Kris. And I'm like, okay, because I don't want to judge another company. I'm not naming them. I'm just saying the outsourcing agencies that are popping up all over the place are very expensive. And they also don't set you up with systems and process. So you hire somebody and it won't work out. And if you end the contract, it's a whole bunch of problems with it. But for me to be bold-faced and say, it's too many words for me just to explain what I said to you. So here I am qualifying it, softening it, and explaining it. And nobody has 5 minutes for me to politely walk them down this path and explain it. So I have to say, hey, they're robbing you. Here's what the problem is. They do this, that. And I really struggle with that still because I want to be positive. I don't want to be harsh. But people need the information concise and tight. Yeah. And I would say that too if I was speaking to you one-on-one, but yet putting it in a blog, I'm like, ooh, I want to soften it and explain it. So you're right. People need to hear what your thoughts are, or you're no different than anybody else.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing challenge. I think if anyone's kind of facing that when they sit down, put pen to paper, or even, writing a book or whatever it is, and it's probably more about the words rather than when you can get on a podcast and explain it. But it's something that I think most people will struggle with at some point, but you've got to work through it, and you work through it by doing and getting more confident and comfortable with your voice out there. No one ever started being just a gun thought leader from the get-go. It just doesn't happen. So people should have permission to lean into that over a period of time. So you wrote the book kind of came first. Is that what I'm hearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the book, I wrote the book to reach more people because I just thought, oh my gosh, your business should support your life instead of consuming it. And I was so thankful that I returned to a business that was intact. And also during the journey, he knew how hard I worked. If he had thought for a minute that, things were falling apart for me, that would have been one more burden for him to carry. And I'll be honest, when I talk about systems, when I came back to work, like if you've ever gone through immense grief, like you could put your keys in the microwave, like your brain is just shut down. And so I was following my own super toolkits as if I was a brand new employee, like, okay, do this next, do this. And at least I could be back in the office and gave me something to do because it was like I had acquired brain injury. I just didn't have the bandwidth to remember things, not because it had been time, but because I was just numb from grief, right? So that was helpful. And then I realized, oh my gosh, everybody has a story. Everybody has interruptions. Parents get ill, you break an arm, there's all these things. And so I just thought, what a horrible situation if you went through something traumatic and then lost your business. And so I just wanted to reach more people, and I just knew that they wouldn't have to own up and say I'm struggling. They could just read the book on their own. And so that was my first big step towards helping. Right.
So you were actually running the marketing agency business at that time when you wrote the book, and then the book has actually created the new business.
Yeah, because my marketing clients asked me when we talked about in the previous show, that they didn't know I was away. Because we didn't tell them, and we were able to sustain the business without them knowing. So they said, hey, if you could do that, maybe you could help me get to my kids' soccer game. So I started working with them under that capacity, and that kept growing, and the other part diminished.
There you go. That's not just a pivot, that's a U-turn.
Yeah.
Which is a great story in itself. Like you write the book and you build a new business off the back of a book. I love it. I mean, that is amazing. So the impetus of So the book was the number one thing to get you out there. And so that was I guess the impetus to start getting back on social. And as you say, it took time for you for all of this to come about. Nothing's just instant. And so what came first after that? I mean, a book is, to me, the ultimate owned media property. You own it, you control it. You control its distribution, what it looks like. So it's a big premium signature piece. So that's your massive flag in the ground. And look, I always think it's a great place to start, but it's probably the hardest place to start. In terms of the podcast, how long after you did the book did the podcast come up? Because you've got quite a few episodes now.
Yeah, well, thank you. It was, oh my gosh, I don't know, maybe a year. So I did the book, and then the book is done, and then you think, I need to get on podcasts. So then I started a process of pitching people to be on the podcast. And I even bought a very expensive microphone first. And I remember saying to somebody on my team, oh Lord, I hope somebody lets me go on their show because I've bought this microphone. But I had to show up with, they always say, do you have a good microphone? So I was like, all right, I'll buy a microphone. I'll look like I'm a professional. Please let me on your show. So I started getting a system in play to pitch people, like with a video. My videos weren't as refined, and probably too long, and I explained my story, but I started with a video, and right away people liked that I took that effort to do the video. So I got that feedback, and really the exercise was, I thought if I send out, I remember pitching what I deemed to be lead to read is a very he's won a lot of awards, and I had listened to his podcast. And this was like, now we're talking 4 years ago, podcasts have taken quite a leap. Like, I only knew of 2 or 3 podcasts at the time. I wasn't the podcast junkie that I am now. So I had pitched him, and I was like, and he only has authors on his show. But really, I was pitching him as exercise in pitching. My goal was, if he opened the email and replied with a no, I thought I did a good job because I got him to see the pitch. Mm-hmm. And then because he dealt with like New York Times best-selling authors and stuff, but so he was not like, this was just to get him to open the email. But he said my pitch was so good, he said, what the heck, let's do it. And I was like, oh my gosh. What am I going to do on this show? Because he had such big guests. So I was like, oh no, right? So then I started being on shows, and then people told me that I was a really good guest. And the first number of people, I heard it a lot, but I just thought, that's nice. They're being nice to me, right? And so then finally people started saying, you should have your own show. And I thought, I didn't even understand. So then someone explained to me, and I'm so naive, I thought, well, isn't there enough podcasts? And this was like 3 years ago now. Are we done with podcasts? Like, what's next? And they're like, no, it really gives you opportunity to meet people. And there's and it was like the best thing for my business, even though my topic is very broad. It could be anything, business, sales, social media, LinkedIn, whatever. Because I didn't want it to be all about systems and processes, because people who need it are not going to listen to that kind of show, right? So I just thought,
they haven't got time.
They don't have time. No, like people that are overweight do not listen to fitness shows, right? Those are people who are fit, right? So I made it generic, so then they talked me into it, and I thought, oh, okay, let's try that. But it really has been a fantastic tool for networking, for leveraging relationships, for another place to produce content, to repurpose content. But it just came then from me doing a lot of shows. Right. It was not the original goal at all.
And so we've got you've gone into the earned media. You've done a lot of things really quickly, like often it's, get your show or build your own media channels and work on social media and build that base, and then start with the earned media, which is, being on other people's shows and other media outlets and interviews and stuff like that. And it's sort of this progression. And then the book, you've written the book, then you've done the earned media, and then you've gone to the owned media and social media. I love it. It's tipped a lot of my thinking on its ear. So I love the approach. But the fact of the matter is that, you've tackled some of the hardest things. So writing a book is hard, and getting on other people's shows, it takes you've got to get up and on it. Like,
you got to do it. You got to reach out.
You got to reach out. It's not the easiest thing. You can't hide.
No.
There's no hiding. And I'll backtrack here for a bit. I get pitched a lot for this show, and 99% of pitches fall short. Let's just be nice about it. And they're left wanting. And your pitch is great, and you use video. You use a personalised video, and you explain things. And I felt an alignment immediately. So the fact that you did it with video is incredibly powerful, because no one does it. For starters, there's cut through, and it's personal. So just wanted to put that in there for context, and that's clearly part of the way you do it.
But if I can add to that, what I did also is I did my homework. So it wasn't that I said, hey, I started off saying, I'm a podcast junkie. I found your show. Here's what I liked about your show. Here's what I think you do well. And in listening to your show, I think you and I could have a meaty conversation.
Correct.
And here's why. So, I had time with all the other things that are taken off my plate so that I have creative freedom to say, yeah, this would be a good choice. And I want to I started a conversation with you. So at the end of the day, it is a pitch. But I think it really was starting a conversation where so many of us get these dry pitches. And it's just like, I love when somebody says, well, I wrote 47 books and I'm amazing and I'm all these things and you should have me on your show. Okay, what about me? Like, what are you going to bring to this show? Like, other than that you're amazing and I'm not, right?
Yep.
So I think there is that as well. It's just building your brand, and then also you got to hear how I talk to you, and then you get an alignment with who I am as a person, which is back to your brand. So it really is, the more conversations you can have with someone, the more it helps me navigate and figure out what is the best version of my brand, and then it spreads the brand juice to people like you.
The other part of it too is doing it strategically, ongoing, as part of an overall, strategy, I guess. How many podcasts have you been on?
I don't know. You know what? I didn't count them as effectively as I should have in the beginning, because I was just so surprised when people let me on their show that I was like, oh my gosh, look, another one, right? So I didn't know. I would guess, I'm just guessing, I would say maybe 400 shows.
Wow.
Yeah.
I know when I Googled you, and there are other Kris Wards out there with a K, but you popped up a lot for being on other people's podcasts. That's where you popped up, and YouTube videos, and often, a podcast is a YouTube video as well. So I can attest to the fact that you're everywhere in a good way. And I've had a previous guest on, Oscar Trimboli, who is a world-leading listening expert, and he has for a number of years made being on other people's podcasts as a strategy, and he's got help doing it. He's got an agency that helps him on that side of things to save him time. But he says it's been incredibly effective. I think by memory he does kind of two a month. Ongoing. It just keeps going and it rolls, and it's been very effective for his business, and clearly this has worked for your business, and it feeds back into your podcast as well. So undoubtedly being exposed to other people's audiences is helping your podcast as well.
I'm sure it does, but here's what I really think. This is where I think it really comes. First of all, I would say, this is where I struggle with using my voice. I would say one of the last things I would ever give up is when I get pitched all the time from PR agencies, marketing agencies, and again, they give me this whole thing that this guy's great, and doesn't mean anything. Like, that's one of the last things I would give up. You can have your team do other things, but like, you heard my voice, you saw my face, I was speaking to you, and that was a game changer versus somebody that I hired to pitch you about me, right? So I think that really is it. I don't buy into, I'm sure your audience is great. I was listening to your show, so I'm great. So they all must be great, right? What I really think the leveraging comes in is twofold. One is now we've had it's almost like a fifth date. When people reach out to you on LinkedIn and say, let's hop on and see if we can collaborate, I don't have time for that. What do you want to do, right? But now we've had a reason to have a conversation. I'm going to stay in touch with you. I know who you are. We've joked, we've chatted. There's something here. We have a memory now. So to me, it's that relationship that if I maintain it, that's a big deal, right? Then I also think, when you Googled me and all these names came up, that's social proof.
Yep.
So a potential client heard from somebody else and they Google my name and it's like all these things come up. They don't even listen to them. They don't care, but they say, you've been doing this. I got some street cred. So whether I'm exposed to your audience and it grows my podcast, and I would say too, my podcast, again, it's about maintaining relationships or having people come through that might be able to use my services that get to know me better because it's like a fifth date thing. So I think it's fantastic that I have an audience, and I must have one because we've got over 1,000 5-star reviews. So we've got, a good base there. But I think even if nobody was listening, me connecting with you and having you in my network and getting social proof is enough reason for me to do podcasts.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree on that. And I think there's things that we, how many times do we hear this has to lead to a commercial outcome, and it's just never been the case. It's the sum of the parts. It's the whole thing, and potentially one of the most powerful things about having a strong brand and having your content and being on other people's podcasts is validation. It might be the kicker that gets people, maybe they've heard about you that way, but they'll go in deeper and they'll do their research before even contacting you. And it really is, you've got lots of cheerleaders out there, and I don't think we can ever have enough cheerleaders in this world. So that's great. I knew you were active on podcasting, but that's an amazing journey there. And you're 100% right. It's about networking. If you're running a podcast and you're connecting with others and getting them on the show, you're making some pretty impressive connections if you're getting the right people on the show. And the people you're getting on the show are probably influencers in some degree, nano influencers, micro influencers, macro influencers. And it's all just part of the, being out there and active. It's being I call it being an active participant in today's reputation economy. And
you're so right. Yeah. And you said it, like you looked me up and all of a sudden you're like, oh, she's on all these shows. Her face keeps coming up somewhere. So all of a sudden that gives me a brand. My face is everywhere. Yeah. That's all the brand is repetition. So you're right there. And then also, if you set yourself up like I have, and I'll often all of a sudden I'll meet somebody and I'm like, hey, I might send you, Trevor, I met this person I think would be a great guest for your show, and I connect you to people. And then people go, oh, Kris is so awesome. She introduced me to somebody else. Well, then I'm keeping top of mind because I have the bandwidth and the time, the way my business is set up with my Win team, so that I can do these videos and network and maintain these relationships instead of rotating them.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. There's a lot of, it's the loop of something. I don't know what the loop is, but everything feeds into each other. Just conscious of time because we've covered book, podcast guesting, podcast hosting, social media, I guess, has been dotted throughout that, but you're on all the channels. You're on TikTok. Which scares a lot of people. Walk us through that. I mean, what's your favorite, social media channel? What do you think you have an affinity with which works for you? Is it your TikToks and your Instagrams and your short videos?
I would say so. I think that's a good point. I think you have to pick one or two and then repurpose the rest. So I think LinkedIn has got a lot of weight. So I definitely am active on LinkedIn. Yep. So I would say my two primary ones are LinkedIn and TikTok. And then everything else that I do, I think TikTok is a very true, like you get, it's not about followers and stuff. It's really about content consumption. Yes. So I'm still working a lot on my videos on TikTok and tightening my message. So we haven't mastered that by any means. But what would happen is I can see where I succeed or fail really quickly because the algorithm is completely different than the other platforms. Right. So what happens is then we take those videos and repurpose them on Instagram and Facebook and all that other stuff. So everything else is just repurposed versions of that. But the testing points are TikTok and LinkedIn. And then it just... Again, you do your reps and then you figure out what's resonating or what could I say better, or I told this story too long, or I have to use less words. It's just figuring it out. Yeah,
I actually love that. I mean, I'm a big believer in a 1-2 punch. Mine's LinkedIn and Twitter, but I'm on the others well, I have to be just to experiment and test them out. But I think the fact is you've got, one main one, and maybe TikTok's a bit of still feeling it out, experimenting. And as you say, it's a discovery engine. It is less about the followers, and albeit you can still build a following on it. And it's a great place to test, as you say, you test your material in 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 7 seconds, I think is a optimum. You know, like it's the moment you open your mouth, you've done up your 7 seconds. So it's a challenging, but I think it's a good skill to do because short form video isn't going away, and I think it's a really important platform to experiment with. That's for sure. As it grows and changes, and it's becoming a little bit more mainstream than dancing videos for kids. And so you got the social media, so that's ongoing, that's active. You're actively creating content for that. You've got people helping you repurpose. You've got the podcast that's just ticking along now, and you've got you're blogging as well, and YouTube. I'm interested in I know a lot of your YouTubes are your video interviews that you do. You've got your TikTok videos, I guess, are the ones that are on YouTube Shorts, which I think is a very unutilized and a great opportunity, I think, for people. YouTube Shorts. So if you're going to do TikTok, they do work on YouTube Shorts. Walk us through just what are you thinking around YouTube?
I'm thinking that I shouldn't be producing long form content when I haven't nailed down my short form content.
Right.
So it's very easy to get seduced and say, we're going to do this next thing and throw your back into it. But what you need to do is say, so my YouTube, we do repurpose the short form videos onto YouTube, which is funny. I didn't know my team did that. And then one day I was on YouTube looking, and there I went floating across the bottom in the shorts. And I was like, okay, so we're here now, are we? So when you have a great team, you just discover these things, right? But my TikTok videos are not where they need to be yet. And there's so many things that what I'm recently learning is we do all this stuff in the Winner Circle, but we also work really closely with the VAs that we find for you and hire and on board for you. We do a lot of leadership training so that they're just not task takers, that they really become the backbones to your business. And then suddenly, recently, we realized we're not talking about that enough. That's kind of something fifth date material. Once you come in, we clean this up and do that up. And then people really love the work we do with your VAs. We sustain that relationship and do a lot of work. But suddenly we start to realize by other things we're learning, by repeating our, doing our reps, that I'm not talking about that enough, right? So what I figure out is I need to figure out, hey, how can I make some amazing videos that are short form? And when I really master that, then I can make longer YouTube videos. So anything you see right now on YouTube is just repurposed or chopped up or something. But why am I going to spend 10 minutes teaching you how to do something on YouTube when I can't get your full attention for 2 minutes on TikTok? Yep.
It's a really good point. And it's worth bringing up at this point that, YouTube, there's two parts to YouTube. You either become a YouTuber and I don't want to say play the game, but there is a sort of a process of how to do things and how to do videos and long form. And, there's a bit of effort in doing a 10-minute, 20-minute, hour-long. Yeah. I mean, who knows? I mean, if you're doing tutorials, there's no time limit necessarily for YouTube videos. But, of course, you've got to keep things super, super, super short for TikTok. But, you either use it and commit to it like that and do it once a week and put stuff up regularly, or you just use it as a repository for your videos, the other things you've done, or you've been somewhere, you've been on stage and you get that video, or you're doing interviews and that it becomes a place there, and then you can take them and embed them on your blog and all of that sort of stuff. But so I just want to make the distinction between being on YouTube and being on YouTube,
and I'm all about YouTube. I love it. Yeah. I just don't think I'm good enough for it yet. So that's my issue there. So is YouTube great? Sure. But I believe in failing quickly and being effective. So we're trying to fail as quickly as we can with short form videos and TikTok. And then I'd love to be on YouTube doing a longer format, but I have to find my solid footing in my brand and my voice before I expand.
Of course, being and treating it strategically and doing the best job on it to make it work for you. So hard to do everything. And just finally, you help people build teams and systems and manage their energy and their time and be more effective and all of those things. And I urge people again to go back to our previous episode, just only a couple of episodes ago, where we went deep into the productivity, let's say, side of things. But in terms of how do you do it? How do you get all this stuff done and run a business? So you're no different than a lot of people that I talk to, a lot of my clients, a lot of people who are probably listening to this show. They're running a business, but they're struggling with all the other things. What do you do? What does your team look like from the personal branding side of things?
So my team, I have a team of 3. 1, 2, 3. And so really it's just getting things off my plate. So taking any opportunity that I can to say, can somebody else do that? Even if I'm going to shoot a bunch of videos, can somebody else prep the videos and give me the list of the videos I need to do? And here's the link and here's where we're going to send it, whatever, right? So it's always shaving 10 minutes, 15 minutes off any hour to do that. So in that case, like in my case at this point now, on Mondays, I do video content. So I might do pitches. I do my TikTok videos. I might update videos on my website if somebody says they need to be done. If I have to reach out to someone, any videos that I have to do, even people that reach out to me on LinkedIn and want to connect. Once they connect, I send them a personal video in their message box. So Mondays are video content, and there's a lot of things there. Tuesdays, I deal with my clients in the winner circle, things like that. Wednesdays, I'm often one Wednesday a month, I'm hosting my show. Another Wednesday, I try to stack as many guest appearances as I can. I've scheduled them far in advance, and then Thursday, I've got some play with it. There's some things bigger projects happen on Thursdays. And then Fridays, I do my written content. But I can do all that stuff and all those things, the written content, that's about my brand, and the videos are about my brand. And I can do all those things because we have the super toolkits in play, because my team, we're constantly finding time and saying, okay, what's our next focus? We're working on this right now. But with the super toolkits, my team can constantly take on more and more responsibility. And they'll look at my calendar and say, okay, if we're going to be doing that, they'll come, like, let's say we're starting, which could happen very soon, is they'll say, all right, Kris is going to start her second book now. We need more time on the calendar. And they will be the first to look at the calendar and say, okay, let's look at the super toolkits. There's 10 steps to this. Maybe somebody else can do 4 and Kris only has to do 5. So if that saves us 15 minutes on every hour, now we've got 2 hours she can be writing on Monday. So it's really just knowing what your inventory is so you can adjust.
Yep. And your super toolkits are part of your IP that your business is, your product is the winner's circle, and people in the winner's circle get the super the super toolkits.
Super toolkits.
Yeah, excellent. So in one way, I call it eating your own dog food. You're doing all the things you talk about, which is fantastic. And so that's great. Thanks for unpacking that, because that's to show that, you are focused on your time, and this is part of, because it's important to you. And I think when people say, I haven't got time to, do a video or whatever, it's not that you haven't got time. It's that it's not a priority for you. So otherwise you'll make the time. That's a whole new ball game, which you help people do. But in terms of them trying to fit it into their week and how to do it, and just back up a little bit on that. Your team are they all remote and full time? Are they?
Yeah.
Yep.
All remote, all full time.
All right, excellent. Well, there you go. Now, as I said, we had an interview to delve into all the systems and that side of things a couple of episodes ago. The number just escapes me, and but I urge people to listen to that one. And it's been great talking to you, Kris.
Well, thank you very much. And if you didn't get the other episode, which you should go back, but I will extend. We have a little gift for you at free gift GIFT from Kris KRIS.com. Free gift from Kris.com. And we have some special things in there. They will not last very long, like the free audio version of my book. Excellent. So you might want to check that out. And just reach out to me in the socials and tell me you're a fan of Trevor's show, and we'll become fast friends.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Kris.
Thank you.
The reputation economy is here. The world today needs more genuine, credible experts and leaders to stand up and share their experience, their wisdom, their stories and ideas. Are you in?